But let's break down some of the play-in stuff. You can take that off there just to give people a sense. But Hawks versus Heat. What's your initial read on that, Bradley? Because for me, this seems like a terrible matchup for the Hawks, both in record and just in terms of team competence. Like I'm a Jimmy Butler fan. I think he's kind of an old school superstar or star in a way. I love his consistency. And the Heat are not who they were, but they have a lot of veteran experience on that team. They got Kevin Love mid-season. I mean, that doesn't move the needle a ton. But like at the very least, veteran presence. The Heat seem completely unwieldy, and they also don't have a good record against Miami.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the Heat certainly, obviously just based on record and based on playoff seeding, were better and more dynamic last year when they not only made it to the conference finals against the Celtics, but did push them to 7 games. But I think the reason why I still definitely have more confidence in them going into this play-in game against the Hawks is for that very reason in terms of who was the X factor in those 7 games last year, and that's still Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jimmy Butler, regardless of win or lose in terms of the playoff series, he's shown himself to be a pretty electric and pretty clutch player in the playoffs. He had a really amazing shot in the final seconds, I think, of Game 1 of last year's conference finals to beat the Celtics. Like, he's no stranger to big moments, and I think he's also, just in terms of like a guy who, I'm not even necessarily saying that he's underrated because he is one of probably the top in the top 15, top 20 best players in the league
Yeah.
easily. But he's a guy that can really take over a game on both ends of the floors, get key steals, lock down guys on the perimeter at the point of attack. As well as basically in terms of shot selection and shot difficulty, he can make a lot of shots from a lot of areas on the floor and with very little space required.
Right.
So this Hawks defense is not particularly foreboding to me, I would say. And also, this is a little bit more intangible than actually the product on the floor, but I'm not super confident in the Hawks' ability to withstand any sort of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
I think there have been some obvious clear chemistry issues with Trae Young leading to the ouster of Nate McMillan. Quinn Snyder came in the middle of this season to kind of shepherd them to be able to get to this point in the season. I don't think this team is necessarily. I don't think they're bad or anything like that. I think they have a floor of, I think, with relatively competent play. Trey, for all of his real defensive liabilities, which I think will be kind of one of the key matchups and key dynamics that Eric Spoelstra, the Heat coach, and the Heat themselves will try to exploit consistently.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to try to make every switch on Trae Young a difficult one. So I think one of the big responsibilities that Snyder and the Hawks will have is being able to mask Trae on defense so they can get the most out of him on the other end with 3-point shooting and with the way he can pass. But I think if he's neutralized in any way on defense, where he's being sort of targeted and successfully targeted.
They don't have a release valve outside of that.
That's the issue that I think may arise, where they're going to need another person on that team to step up offensively if Trey gets into foul
Murray,
trouble.
but yeah, right.
But in the sense that Murray is really going to need to step up. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic are really going to have to be crucial in this game, I think, to make it show that it's not just the Trae Young show, good and bad, in the sense of the Trae Young show where Trae completely takes over on offense with no other assistance, or he's getting really targeted on defense, and the Heat make the most of that, because it doesn't really matter who is on the Heat in terms of like, and what I mean by that is they can input a lot of different guys of varying sizes, strengths, skills, and that scheme offensively and defensively due to Eric Spoelstra and the coaching staff is so unbelievably sound and so dangerous that they make the most out of guys who don't necessarily come from the largest of pedigrees. Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, now even Haywood Highsmith is like a plus reserve for them. There's basically very, even now, of course, Udonis Haslem aside, who, retired, had a fantastic, fun last game of his regular season career. He's not seeing the floor in the play-in game, I promise you that. They don't really have a weak link. So in terms of like someone that's super exploitable. So I think that the Hawks will have their work cut out for them, but it's just a matter of them being able to diversify the offense a little bit and hide Trae Young on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way that they win is if Trae Young takes over, and I just don't really see that happening.
And if Trae Young takes over with enough support, because Dejounte Murray has had some truly has had some good games for the Hawks, but I don't think this fit has entirely congealed yet after a full season. Right. I don't know if that compatibility is completely locked in. I think, and of course, and I'm not even saying that necessarily it's a failure.
Trae Young seems like he struggles to play complementary basketball.
Right, and I think that's such a key component is that if you are going to add a piece like DeJounte Murray, the key, at least for me, in terms of them being successful in going forward in the postseason, is Trae needs to make the most of his possessions off ball. He needs to cut. He needs to be in the right place at the right time. He needs to be able to just be there for catch and shoot threes that Murray is either generating, or if he can, or off a rebound, for example, from Clint Capella or something like that. When he is not the center of gravity, he still needs to be as effective as when he is. And that's, I think, going to be the key for them going forward. If that happens, I think they can really make this competitive. I just think I just think the Heat, broadly, in terms of organizationally, schematically, and in terms of what comes out on the floor, are just better prepared for this moment.
The better system. Well, okay, so then we've got the Lakers versus the Wolves as well. Preview there. A lot of people think that the Lakers are going to actually step up and win this one. They've been red hot recently. The Timberwolves are obviously going through some drama because of Rudy Gobert punching Kyle Anderson and then getting suspended. So Gobert will not be playing in this game.
I would just like to talk about this for 1 second.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert is such a moron.
He's an asshole.
I don't know. I just want to take a few seconds to just dedicate some time to both Gobert as well as this particular circumstance because so of course we know Gobert is the guy who after as COVID swept the NBA was the guy who jokingly touched all of the microphones, and then ultimately him and Donovan Mitchell contracted COVID and the season ended in March of 2020. So we kind of know Rudy to be a little bit of like a facetious bastard. Like he doesn't take a lot of things seriously. He's kind of a dick. Like, and also that is also combined with a hysterical amount of disrespect towards him as like a star in the league, in the sense that he gets no really, I would say, beneficial calls towards him. He's not really respected by like all NBA or like he's obviously one defensive player of the year, but like I just think it's interesting like compare, like if he were anybody else, you'd think that he would get more respect than he does, but because it kind of is who he is personally, and I find him like
I don't think anyone likes him.
Like that's what I'm saying is like
problem.
there's no one that wants to like reward Rudy Gobert for his quality of play because of I think who he is personally and what he's kind of shown himself to be, and also seeing how much those pieces that the Jazz received in return and how much they've performed and how well they performed despite not making the playoffs, like Walker Kessler truly making a case for Rookie of the Year while there has been this rancor and discord on the Timberwolves side of things has only further exacerbated that dynamic. So going into this particular moment where Gobert took a swing at Kyle Anderson in the huddle and got sent home is just so funny that I don't know if you saw this, but the day before, an either story in ESPN or The Athletic came out where Kyle Anderson was interviewed or profiled, and he was talking, and he apparently has a blunt sense of motivation or a blunt way of motivating his teammates.
Yes.
And Gobert said something along the lines of like, he can be harsh and he can be critical and he can be intense in the huddle, but I think that's just because of how competitive he is and how much he wants to win, and I don't take it personally. Literally not 12 hours later, he's trying to punch the guy in the huddle.
He took it very personally.
Because he's so upset about what went on. So I don't think the vibes going into this game are particularly good for the Timberwolves, because we're not even discussing how after that,
Yeah,
Jaden McDaniels, in
broke his
frustration,
hand punching a wall.
walked into the tunnel, punched a wall, and fractured his hand.
Yeah.
So things are not looking great for
Not
the
looking
Timberwolves
great.
going into the play-in game. However, they did ultimately win the game based off some real great heroics from Anthony Edwards on the other end of the floor, on both ends of the floor. He blocked the shot, went over, turned the ball over, got it back, and went for an and one to beat the Pelicans. So it ultimately did work out in the sense that they were able to clinch that game. They're in the play-in. I think this is a very interesting matchup because it's two teams that I could either see firing on all the cylinders or like massively fucking up this chance.
Well, that's the thing. So, I mean, to put a button on it, I think that the Lakers are probably going to win. But you also, when you have these emotional swings, especially if Gobert's not playing,
Right.
that's really hard to calculate for. So they could all rally behind Kyle Anderson, who, by all accounts, is the leader in that locker room. Anthony Edwards could go Super Saiyan or whatever the kids say. So, like, I mean, I would probably bet on the Lakers in this matchup, but I don't feel comfortable about it. I feel way more comfortable about the Heat than I do about the Lakers.
And it's interesting because the Lakers, to their great credit, I mean, from January, where they were kind of circling the drain and in the 13 seed, made some real efforts to shore up some real deficiencies they had in terms of shooting and playmaking by, making the trade to get D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura. Like they've done genuinely good work to make this team much more functional around LeBron and around Anthony Davis. And with LeBron and AD back, they definitely have made it so where I can actually see a coherence and a style of play, which when it was Russell Westbrook was still in the fold and Anthony Davis was out, it was hard to even understand what specifically they were trying to do on the floor.
This is a lot more coherent, and we had a caller kind of check us when we were making fun of the Lakers a little bit because it seemed like they were shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Absolutely.
But for the short term, in terms of a patchwork, this seemed like and this is a decent option. We got to get to the next matchup.
No, but I agree. But I think ultimately, if I had to choose just based on the rancor and based on kind of the recency of what's going in, I would probably take the Lakers.
Yes, I think so. I agree with you there. Okay, Bulls versus Raptors. Who are we taking here?
Yeah, this is a weird one.
This kind of is a yucky matchup.
Yeah, this is a weird one because I both don't think the vibes or the state of play for the Bulls are particularly nice, both aesthetically and narratively, like in the sense, like I don't think the basketball they've been playing is kind of disgusting. I think what it frustrates me about the Bulls in particular is that they expended a lot of resources to get DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Zach LaVine on the same team. This was not a team that was like, we're sort of putting our chips into the middle of the table. This was their shot. This was their intention, that this is going to be our nucleus to be a playoff team. And it just has not meshed, and it has only been completely exacerbated by the locus for them and the glue that they've been missing, which is Lonzo Ball and his distribution ability and his playmaking ability, and which does not seem to have any end in sight, unfortunately, because it just seems like his ankle injury has been aggravated multiple times to the tune of even more surgeries after
sad.
the initial prognosis.
Yes.
So it's been a tough road for them to even be at the 10 seed here. And I don't necessarily think they have enough juice or enough kind of dynamism or ingenuity to get past the Raptors, while also have been pretty disappointing relative to how I thought they were going to play earlier in the season. It's a similar argument with the Heat for me here, in the sense that Nick Nurse has such a specific and ingrained style of play with who he has on the floor. It's Fred VanVleet as the floor general, then 4 to 5 like General Grievous from Star Wars guys who have like 8-foot long limbs and play shapeless, positionless basketball and can rebound the ball and hopefully make a few shots while locking down on defense.
Right.
And they've had a little bit more of a defensive miscommunication problem than they have had in recent years, and Scotty Barnes has not been as dynamic or as impactful as he was in his Rookie of the Year season, which is leading them obviously to have a 500 record relative to what they had last year when they kind of did pose a little bit more of a challenge to the 76ers in the playoffs last year. Um, but I still think if I'm thinking about this system, this coach with Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, I'm still probably thinking that they're going to have a better team philosophy and better team
Yeah.
strategy going into this game. I would be pretty surprised if the Bulls pulled this one out.
Me too. I think I feel really good about the Raptors because, really, honestly, just same reasons: veteran leadership and home record. The Raptors have been very good at
Yep.
home and they will host this
And
playoff
that
game.
is not a particularly habitable environment for away. The Raptors have a pretty good faithful.
Yeah. So that's where my mind goes. And then last play-in matchup that we have right now, Pelicans versus the Thunder. Like again, I mean, Zion just it's falling
Can't play.
apart, can't play.
This one is interesting to me
I think I
because
like
of
the Pelicans, but
Yeah, this one is a little. This one's kind of interesting to me because I'm like, obviously because of what has been going on with Zion Williamson, very much kind of just trying to approach this team without even like kind of factoring him into the equation because like at this point it pains me to say this because there's very few players in the NBA who I like to see play more than Zion Williamson. I really like he's one of the
Yes.
most like unique athletes I've ever seen, but he can't stay on the floor and he's never been able to stay on the floor and there's been no definitive answers about what the prognosis of the sort of nebulous injury that he's recovering from.
right.
So you kind of have
Just
to approach
wait
this
on the joints.
Right.
That's what it's gonna be.
you have to kind of approach this game as being like at their best what can CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and their pretty good supporting cast of guys, like Herb Jones, who again, similar to Scotty Barnes, has not been nearly as effective as he was last year. He's still an amazing perimeter defender, but his 3-point percentage has dropped precipitously from last year. So he's not been as reliable of a catch and shoot threat as he was last year. But Trey Murphy is still being able to fill that role and of kind of being a reliable knockdown shooter. So if he can stay hot, if Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum can be the kind of fulcrum of that offense, I think they could take advantage a little bit of the youth of this Thunder team. But this Thunder team is very entertaining and a very fun watch. And I don't think they're going to take this matchup lying down. If the key to this is going to be the Pelicans being able to stop the Thunder's A, transition offense, but B, to control the pace of the game. The Thunder are one of if not maybe the youngest team in the league. They basically I think have an average age of like 20, 21 years of age across the board.
Right.
But now this is a totally new look. Young coach Mark Dagnall has really found something with these guys. Jalen Williams, the Jalen with a Jal, not Jay. There are two Jalen Williams. There are two Jalen's William on the Thunder. And he is a fantastic point guard, really fun player, kind of a dark horse rookie of the year candidate for me. Josh Giddey has kind of found his rhythm as both a fantastic passer and he can and an offensive score as well, along with some kind of guys that you wouldn't necessarily see as super heralded. Isaiah Joe, Nick Wiggins, Andrew's brother, and with the center of gravity obviously being Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is truly one of the most unique scorers in the league.
Absolutely.
Like a guy who is kind of one of one in what he's able to do on the floor, and it's almost hard to even think about whether he could be like complimentary to anyone else. Like this is kind of a perfect role for him. So I think they're a really exciting team, but they're also ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
They're super young. So if they don't win this game, like I don't think it's
Who cares?
I don't think it's a super foreboding for anything bad in their future. I think it's just if the Pelicans can control the pace and their guys, Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, can get on the board in a serious way, they'll win this game. I think it's pretty open and shut there, honestly.
We're taking all of the home teams.
I think it makes sense because there's
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like again, the plan. I really wish this wasn't the way that it's structured, but that's like it does give these teams that are at home a bit of an advantage. But then if that's the case, then I wish that they would just cut it off at 8 and then have every team have 4 or 5 days rest before they're in this playoff crunch.
But I will say, just as a slight aside, given my analysis there, of the four, I think the Thunder have the best shot to win in New Orleans.
I agree. I agree.
I think the other three are more open and shut in terms of the home court advantage. If anyone's going to win win a home game there, I think it's going to be OKC.
Which is shocking because OKC has a really bad, like, I think they only won 16 games on the road this year. But I just think in terms of the matchup, and they can have,
I just think they're hungry
have SGA
for it.
take over the game too, potentially, which would
Totally.
be a legendary performance.
Oh, it would be
for them.
amazing.
Yeah.
And they're hungry for it. Like Jalen Williams literally posted on his Instagram story when they qualified for the play in the video of Patrick Beverley when the Timberwolves won the play in. He like jumped up on the stands and ripped his shirt off and threw it into the crowd.
Contrast that
like,
with what's going on with the Mavericks organization.
Right. It's like
now.
they're excited to be there. Like they want to be there and they want to win. They want to be competitive in this game. I think that matters. Like they're excited to go in and do this.
Yeah.